On September 4th, 476 AD, the last Roman emperor of the West, Romulus Augustus, was removed from power by a Germanic warlord named Odoacer. More than 1,000 years after its legendary founding, the Western Roman Empire came to an end. At its height, Rome controlled nearly 1.9 million square miles of territory. It ruled lands stretching from Britain to the Middle East and commanded the largest professional army the world had ever seen. Yet despite this immense power, Rome collapsed with barely a fight. By the time Romulus was deposed, almost nothing remained of the Western Empire except Italy itself. The eastern half of the empire, known today as the Byzantine Empire, would survive until 1453, but the Western Roman Empire fell apart in the 5th century, never to recover. The fall of Rome was not caused by a single event. It was the result of decades of pressure, invasion, internal decay, and poor leadership. One of the most important turning points came from the barbarian migrations. In the east, the brutal expansion of the Huns forced many tribes to flee their homelands. Seeking safety, entire populations moved toward Roman borders. One such group was the Goths, who arrived at the Roman frontier in 376 AD. The Romans allowed them to cross into the empire, but treated them horribly. When famine struck, Roman officials refused to provide food. Many Goths were forced to sell their own children just to survive, often receiving little more than dog meat in return. This abuse led to open rebellion. The conflict that followed, known as the Gothic War, was catastrophic for Rome. In 378 AD, Roman forces met the Goths at the Battle of Adrianople, in modern-day Turkey. It was one of the worst defeats in Roman history. The Eastern Emperor Valens was completely overwhelmed. Nearly 2/3 of the Roman army was slaughtered, and Valens himself was killed on the battlefield. For the first time in centuries, a Roman emperor had died fighting barbarians. The war ended under Emperor Theodosius I, who made a historic decision. He allowed the Goths to settle permanently inside the empire. Gothic soldiers were recruited into the Roman army, and for the first time, an entire barbarian people were allowed to remain unified within Roman territory. This decision would haunt Rome. Tensions soon returned, especially under Gothic leader named Alaric. Alaric had once served Rome loyally as a military commander, but after the death of Theodosius, the empire was divided between his two sons, Arcadius in the east and Honorius in the west. The Goths living inside Roman borders became known as the Visigoths, or Western Goths. Fed up with Roman mistreatment and broken promises, the Visigoths elected Alaric as their king. They marched on the empire. After limited success in the east, Alaric turned his attention to the much weaker Western Roman Empire. In 401 AD, he first besieged Rome, but was driven back by the brilliant general Stilicho. Emperor Honorius, however, was detached from reality. Fearing invasion, he moved the capital from Rome to the swamp-protected city of Ravenna, far from the people he ruled. In 408 AD, Honorius made a fatal mistake. He ordered the execution of Stilicho, the very man who had defended Rome for years. Rome was left defenseless. Alaric returned and laid siege to the city. Starving citizens paid enormous ransoms, and even installed a rival emperor to pressure Honorius into negotiations. Alaric demanded land for his people. Honorius refused. In 410 AD, Alaric marched on Rome for the third time. This time there was almost no resistance. The city was looted for 3 days. It was the first time Rome had been sacked in nearly 800 years. According to legend, when Honorius was told Rome has fallen, he panicked, believing it referred to his favorite chicken named Roma. When he learned it was the city instead, he was reportedly relieved. The sack of Rome marked a psychological breaking point. The empire never recovered. Soon, Roman authority collapsed across the west. Britain was abandoned. When its people begged Honorius for help, he refused. Roman rule in Britannia ended forever. Across Gaul and Hispania, Germanic tribes poured in. The Suebi founded a kingdom in western Spain. The Vandals, led by Genseric, crossed into North Africa, captured Carthage and built a powerful naval empire that dominated the Mediterranean. The Visigoths seized southern Gaul and later Hispania, creating their own kingdom on Roman land. Even when Rome temporarily united with barbarian allies to defeat Attila the Hun, the victory only delayed the inevitable. Once the Huns were driven back, Rome's former allies turned on it again. By the 470s, the Western Empire was a shell. The Roman general Orestes overthrew Emperor Julius Nepos and placed his teenage son Romulus on the throne. Meanwhile, the barbarian soldiers serving Rome, known as foederati, demanded land in Italy as payment. Orestes refused. They rebelled under the leadership of Odoacer, who defeated and killed Orestes, then marched on Rome. Romulus was deposed but spared due to his young age. Odoacer sent the imperial insignia to the Eastern Emperor, signaling that there would be no more Roman emperors in the West. The Western Roman Empire was finished. But invasions alone do not explain Rome's fall. The empire had grown too large to govern. Communication from distant borders could take weeks or months. Administration became inefficient. The Western Empire was also poorer than the East, relying heavily on agriculture, while wealthy trade centers lay in Byzantine territory. Endless warfare drained state finances. Infrastructure collapsed. Roads, aqueducts, and cities were neglected. Rome's economy depended on slave labor, but with expansion halted, the supply of slaves dried up. The system collapsed under its own weight. To fill the ranks of the army, Rome increasingly relied on foreign mercenaries who felt no loyalty to the empire. Their allegiance was to gold and commanders, not Rome itself. Leadership also declined. Emperors were often inexperienced, corrupt, or completely detached. Many inherited power as children. The aristocracy grew richer than the state and controlled weak rulers for personal gain. Some historians also argue that Christianity weakened imperial authority. With one god instead of many, emperors could no longer claim divine status, undermining a key source of legitimacy and control. Yet Rome's legacy did not disappear. The Eastern Roman Empire lived on for nearly 1,000 more years. In 800 AD, Charlemagne was crowned Holy Roman Emperor, reviving the idea of Rome in the West. Latin shaped modern European languages. Roman law, roads, cities, and Christianity formed the foundation of Western civilization. Rome fell in 476 AD. But its influence never truly died.